Okay, the last session we had completed our chapter 5. We had a lot of important topics that we discussed there. A lot of detailed discussions is what we had there. Right from the initial, let's say, the VAR concepts, we discussed the various means of calculating VAR. We had discussed the delta normal methods. We had discussed the historical simulation methods. Okay, we went on to the full revaluation methods. Okay, Monte Carlo simulations. We went on to expected shortfall methods, coherent measures, stress testing, scenario analysis, country risk, the various qualitative, quantitative techniques of country risk. We had good discussions, interesting things as well in between. Basel Committee 21 points. Okay, chapter 6, like I was telling you the last session just at the end as well, chapter 6 and chapter 9, the two chapters that we're left with, are the biggest chapters of our syllabus, the two biggest chapters of our syllabus. Okay, chapters 1, 2, 3 and 4 were in an order, if you remember the discussion. So we went into a process, right from, let's say, types of risk, understanding, identifying and analyzing the risk, and then risk management and the evaluation of risk management techniques. It was a process. Chapter 5 was about risk models, various methods by which we were trying to model risk and measure risk actually. 6, 7, 8 and 9 is where we will be discussing various types of specific risks. So let's say chapter 6 we're going into credit risk. Chapter 7 we had discussed governance risk with you. So governance was what we discussed at length in chapter 7 with you. Chapter 8 was a short one. ERM is all that we discussed. So we said that the risk management should be done at overall enterprise levels. And then we went on to discuss with you operational risk, and we discussed the various, we will be discussing operational risk with you as well. Okay, credit risk, just to discuss a little bit more about it. What is credit risk by the name? Okay, credit is something, so credit comes with the concept of giving a loan. Okay, credit risk is this scope. By the name itself, it should come to you spontaneously, intuitively. Credit risk is the risk of default. Credit risk is also like a counterparty risk. We will use these terms. So what is a credit risk? That the other party may default, may not pay the full amount or may not pay at all the amount that is due to us. That is credit risk, the risk of the other party defaulting, counterparty risk. So credit risk is gonna exist whenever we have a bilateral transaction with somebody else. So let's say if I am taking a loan from a bank, so then there is a credit risk for the bank that if I have taken a loan, I may default. Let's say credit risk will be there in case of credit sales. So if you're making a credit sales, there is a chance that the debtor may not pay the money to us. Okay, so there will be various situations where there can be credit risk, where the other party who's supposed to pay to us, may not honor the contract. That's credit risk. That's the chances of default of the other party to perform their aspect of a credit transaction. Once again, credit risk is the risk of the other party defaulting in performing their side of a credit transaction. Credit risk is the risk of other party defaulting in performing their side of a credit transaction. When you look at this line, you will realize the fact that the credit risk can be from both the sides, because it is the risk that the other party may default in performing their functions or their responsibilities in a credit transaction. So let's say if in a credit transaction I am the one who's making a credit sales. The debtor is the one who's supposed to pay to me. I have a credit risk that the debtor may not pay to me. But the debtor also faces a credit risk of the fact that I may stop the supplies interimly in between. That's the credit risk got to be there from both sides. ICI goes ahead to discuss this with you and tell you that credit risk is a two-way risk. It is got to be there for both the parties. in a credit transaction, both the parties are going to face credit risk because both the parties will be at an exposure and they will be likely of default by the other party. So which is why credit risk is not a one-sided risk, it's going to be a two-sided risk. We will discuss this. Okay, I'm discussing a lot of concepts with you because this chapter is a huge one, so you have to connect. Okay, I'm laying down a foundation. I'm straight away going into the concepts that are there in the first initial concepts of the chapter, so that when we straight away go into the book, it's got to be more easy, because this is a part, the today's session, the topics that we discuss, I'm going to discuss with you a lot of things for the next few minutes. Okay, 15-20 minutes, and then when we go into the books, things will be a lot more easy, comfortable and clear to us. So that's how we're going to break this together. So, okay, so then we discuss, read and write, and then discuss, and then read and write. Okay, so that's how credit risk is got to be a two-way risk, is what the book says. Now, if any business, any place there is a risk, what do? We do a risk return trade-off. This is a word that you've been hearing, I think, since God knows when. At least IPCC 100 times you would have heard, CA final 1000 times you would have heard. So IPCC intermediate. So ideally credit risk, or any type of risk for that matter, whenever there is a risk, I will do a risk return trade-off. So what is a risk return trade-off? So simple language, it is cost benefit analysis. So I would look at the cost of the risk and I would look at the benefit side of taking that risk, and then I will eventually decide whether I want to take that risk or not. That's going to be a risk return trade-off. That's what I will be doing in whenever I have to take a risk, I will first do a risk return trade-off to decide whether I should take that risk or not. I will do a trade-off, risk return trade-off. Okay. So similarly for credit risk also, let's say when the banks are giving credit, there are chances of default. So what do? They will do a risk return trade-off. They will look at the chances of default of the other party, and they will look at the return that they are going to be earning by giving the credit, and then accordingly decide whether they want to give the credit or not. If they find that the chances of default of a customer is higher, risk is higher, so either they will not want to give the credit, or they may increase the return that they want in terms of the interest rate for the credit. That is why people with lower credit worthiness, have to pay higher rate of interest to be able to get a loan. They have to pay a higher rate of interest to be able to get a loan. That is what happens with a credit risk. So now in a credit risk, we will do a risk return trade-off. See whether it is justified for me to go ahead with this credit risk or not. Okay. Now in credit risk, we will talk about risk of default of the other party. There will be chances of default of the other party. How do we cover the chances of default? We will discuss that there are two basic, very simple methods of covering the chances of default. Is that you can either take a guarantee, third party guarantee, have a guarantor who's going to guarantee that this person, vouch for this person that he will pay. If he does not pay, I will pay. That's a third party guarantee. Or I can take a collateral. You know what's a collateral, I'm sure by now. You will take a collateral security. That's the most common method for giving credit. That's sir, I will take a collateral against the credit, and with the, according to the value of the collateral is what the credit would be given. Generally, let's say 80% of the collateral value or 75% of the collateral value in terms of immovable properties. That is how I will give you the credits. So you give me a collateral of 1 crore and I give you a loan of 80 lakhs. That's how I will keep a cushion, but that is how I will take a collateral from you to ensure that there are less chances of you defaulting. But the problem is, sir, even with collateral there are two issues. What are the two issues, sir? The problem with collateral is that if I take a collateral, if the person defaulted, now let's say he gave me a property of 1 crore and he defaulted. Now the problem is, if I go to the market to sell this property, I may not be able to get 1 crore. Why, sir? It is worth 1 crore. Yes, but there have to be a buyer for 1 crore. This is exactly what happened in the US 2008 crisis. There were several customers who defaulted and they said you can take away the property, but the problem is the banks took the property, but there were no buyers for the property because there was oversupply of properties in the market. So eventually the valuations went down, oversupply, the prices went down, and that is why the assets could not recover the loan amount. So that is a problem that we might face, that we may have a problem liquidating the collateral. We may have a problem liquidating the collateral. And the second problem may be that the value of the collateral may change and it may not be sufficient subsequently. I gave equity shares worth 1 crore as collateral, and the shares of that company plunged, fell steep, and they became worth 50 lakhs. Now the problem is, the bank gave me a loan of 80 lakhs against those securities, and now if I default, banks can't even recover 80 lakhs from those securities because now the value of those securities have gone down to 50 lakhs. That is exactly what I'm trying to tell you here, that collaterals also we face a problem. Problem can be that the value of collaterals can go down. The problem can be in liquidating the collaterals. These are issues that we face with respect to collaterals. Third party guarantee is going to be a solution to overcome defaults. Credit risk. Risk of default or counterparty risk is what we are going to be discussing in this chapter. Now, credit risk can be for credit sales also, like I said at the start. Credit risk can be with respect to credit loans given by banks. However, this chapter mainly focuses on the bank aspect only. Which is why credit risk can be in various ways. There can be various types of transactions where there could be credit risk. There can be various types of transactions where there can be credit risk. But our focus in this chapter would be only on the loans given by banks. That's the credit aspect that we will be discussing in this chapter. So in this chapter, we don't go ahead and discuss every type of credit risk. We focus on the credit given by banks in terms of loans and look to measure and manage that credit risk. How do we measure that risk? What are the components of that measurement? We will discuss how to manage those risks, how can be the ways of combating credit risks, for example third party guarantees, for example collaterals, and then we will discuss credit scores. Okay, that's going to be there towards the last part of the chapter. So I'm sure you've heard of credit scores. You keep hearing these words and ads online as well. Check your credit score. And credit score has a lot of importance in today's world as well, because new credit cards, when you apply, when you have to take a loan, your existing credit score has a lot of relevance there. So credit scores, how do you calculate credit scores? We'll discuss. There are various methods available in the market. FICO method being the most common, FICO. So we will discuss various methods of credit risk models. Okay, that's how we will be pacing the chapter. Okay, as usual we will start off with the ICI MAT only, the starting basic concepts. The initial level when we start the chapter with, we will discuss what is credit risk. Okay, how do you measure credit risk? That's how we will start off. Go into the banking aspects, discuss various ways by which bank gives credit, the various types of loans that are given by the banks. I'm sure you would have heard of a lot of names. We will discuss them. There will be a lot of new names that are going to come, and we'll discuss them at length as well together. Okay, let's move in the books then. Understanding credit risk. Credit is the basis of business. Though it is difficult to define, but it can be termed as amount of money that will be paid later in exchange of some goods or services received earlier. Credit is nothing but, in terms of basic, it can be defined as an amount of money that will be paid later in exchange for some goods or services received earlier. So it is a payable, basically. That's credit. It's a payable that is created, that becomes a credit. Okay, since it involves a commitment to pay in future and future is uncertain, it involves the risk. The problem is that the person who has to pay it in the future, and the risk is the future is uncertain, and in the future he may pay or may not pay. That is the risk that we face. In the future he may pay or he may not pay. That is the risk that we face. Credit risk. Hence, credit risk can be defined as refusal or inability of credit customer to pay the owed sum, partially or full, in time. Refusal of the credit customer to pay the amount in full or part. Okay. Credit risk can be defined as the refusal of the amount to pay by the credit customer, full or part, in time. So it does not pay either fully or partly in time. That's the credit risk, the default by the customer to pay the amount. This is also known as counterparty risk. That's what I was telling you. It is counterparty risk, that the counterparty may back out of the transaction. He may not honor the transaction. He may not fulfill the transaction and perform as we had agreed to. That's the default that we talk about here. While in non-banking business, credit risk is related to promised payment for goods and services supplied. In the context of banking business, it means failure or refusal to refund the loan account by the borrower in full or partly in time. Simple. So in non-banking terms, it is non-payment for goods and services received, basically. So for goods and services received, the amount that I was payable or that I was due to pay, I am not paying on time. That's credit risk. In terms of banking, the loan that I have taken or the amount that I have borrowed or the services that I have received, I am not paying for that on time. That's credit risk. So credit risk is basically not paying the amount that is due from me on time. That's the chances of default. That's the counterparty risk that we talk about. This is interesting. Two-way risk. The definition of credit risk can also be viewed from another angle. That is the receiver of goods or borrower in case of banking. This risk lies in not supplying the committed supply of goods by the seller, leading to production halt or other results for the buyer. Similarly, in banking business, the borrower faces the risk of withdrawing the lending facilities by the bank. That is where the credit risk becomes a two-sided risk. It's a two-way risk, the book says. Why, sir? Because just as the borrower has to pay the money, and there's a risk that he may not pay the amount on time. Just as the borrower has to pay the money and he may not pay the amount on time, that's a risk. Similarly, even the loan provider, the bank, may withdraw the loan facility whenever they want. So let's say if they feel that the risk has increased or whatever reasons, if they feel that they need to, they may withdraw the fund facilities or the lending facilities that they had provided to us. If I have borrowed or if I have purchased goods on credit, the person providing the goods on credit may stop providing the goods. If it's on a continuous basis, he may stop providing the goods. That is also a risk that we face. So it's not just one way, it's both the ways. The other side also faces the risk. Because in a credit transaction, what did we say? The credit risk is the risk that the other party in a credit transaction defaults or does not perform their responsibilities appropriately. The other side, it could be the borrower side or the lender side, the seller side or the buyer side. Risk return trade-off. As discussed earlier, credit is the basis of business, and accordingly, while decision to give credit to be, there should be a trade-off between risk and return for the supplier or lender. In case of banking business, risk is greater when larger amount of credit is granted or when credit is granted for longer periods. Goes without saying, sir. In a bank, when I give a larger amount, the risk is higher. When I give a 100 rupee loan, so there are less chances of default, and even if it defaults, I think at least 100 I can recover. But when I give a 100 crore loan, the minute I add crores to it, the problem is that the loan is so big that recovery would be difficult. Liquidating the collaterals may also be difficult. There will be more issues involved, and there will be greater chances of default. Risk will be higher. So return that we will expect will also be higher. Similarly, let's say if the loan is taken for a longer period of time, when I'm taking a loan for 15 days, 1 month, there are greater chances, looking at the borrower today, I know that in 1 month he will definitely not become such a poor guy that he will not be able to repay this much amount. But when I give a 15-year loan, I don't know what the world's going to be like after 15 years. And I definitely do not know what this person is going to be like, what his mindset is going to be like, and what his capacity is going to be like in 15 years. Which is why where the longer the period of loan, the greater would be the risk. The larger the amount of loan, the greater would be the risk. Which is why if you look at the yield curve, when you look at the interest rate curve, if you look at the market, go to the bank and ask for the loan. So when you look at a 1-year loan and when you look at a 10-year loan, you will always find the 10-year loan to be more. 10-year loan rate would be higher. Why? Because you're taking a loan for a longer period. So when you're taking a loan for a longer period, the risk is higher. So they will charge you a higher rate of interest for that. That's the risk return trade-off that we're talking about. So risk also, credit risk also will change with respect to the amount of loan. It will change with respect to the period of loan, and accordingly the return that the bank will expect in terms of the interest rate would also be higher because of the higher credit risk. The optimal credit decision would maximize return. The trade-off between risk and return in the context of credit risk calls for following decisions. How much credit risk should be accepted in return of increase in sales or business in case of banking? Okay, so what happens is, let's say, practically understand this, that if other businesses give credit in the market, talk about in a business, if other businesses give credit in the market and if I don't give credit in the market, I'm going to lose sales. Obviously, other businesses give credit and I don't give credit, then I'm likely to lose sales in the market. And if I start giving credit, I will have higher sales. So that is where I will have higher benefits coming in for my business. So credit sales will lead to, giving credit will lead to increase in sales profitability for the business. But if I start giving too much credit, the chances of default increases, and the greater the chances of default, the greater the bad debts and the losses increase. And eventually, because of the increase in credit risk, my business valuations will start going down. My business valuations will start going down. So which is why higher the credit risk, it's not that you can always say higher is better or lower is better. There is going to be some optimal point in between. It's going to be like a reverse U curve. In fact, reverse actually. So as the credit risk will increase, initially the business value will increase and then it will start decreasing. Why? Because once you start taking too much of credit risk in the business, it will be too risky for the business. Eventually the business will start facing more of losses and it will be detrimental for the business. So we want to find some level in between when the credit risk is optimum for us. But what would that point be? It is difficult to define. It's subjective. It's something that you gain by experience actually. Okay, but we're just saying that the optimal point is where the risk return trade-off gives us the highest benefit. Optimal point is when the risk return trade-off gives us the highest benefit. That's going to be the optimal point for us. How much credit risk should be accepted? That's something that the business has to decide. Even banks, how much loan credit should I give? Because the higher I give, obviously I will earn higher interest. But the more credit that I give, ultimately there will be greater chances of bad debts. The more risky customers I give credit, the more chances of bad debts. Return will be higher, but risk will be higher. So you have to kind of balance it. Neither too high risk, neither too high return. Risk and return go hand in hand. High risk, high return. Low risk, low return. So how much risk are you willing to take will depend upon your risk appetite. We have discussed several times in the previous chapters. How much compensation should be added while pricing the product? So if I am taking a higher risk, bank loan concept, if I am taking a higher risk, I will consider that in the pricing of the product, the loan. So the bank will then charge a higher rate of interest if they feel that the risk is higher. But how much higher compensation, how much higher pricing will they want to charge? That is something that we have to decide. How much higher? How much compensation should be added while pricing the product? Placing a cap or limit for each customer, that's going to be important. So for each customer, based upon the assets, the net worth, the various factors, we will decide a cap or a maximum limit up to which the credit can be given to the customer. It's not that I can go to an infinite levels. There will be a limit up to which each person can get a loan. So tomorrow you and I, if we go for a loan for 10 lakhs, 50 lakhs, 1 crore, we might get a loan. We might get a loan. But if you and I go for a loan of 1000 crores, but if Mukesh bhai goes, Mukesh, okay, so if Mukesh bhai goes for a loan, obviously he might get a loan of 1000 crores in Leica. Okay, so putting a cap on the limit for a customer. Acceptance or rejection of the customer's request. So the customer will make a request for a loan or for a credit sale, whether I have to accept it or not accept it. So I may get a customer who might come to me and say, sir, I want to buy on credit and I will buy this much quantity of goods, whether you will accept that order or not, to accept or reject. Similarly, if a customer comes for a loan to a bank, whether to accept or not, given the terms and conditions. Credit risk in capital markets. Okay. Credit risk analysis from bank's point of view will be an umbrella covering credit risk of other financial institutions. Credit risk analysis from the bank's point of view will be an umbrella covering credit risk of other financial institutions. A bank acts as an intermediate between the provider of funds and seeker of funds. How does that happen, sir? Goes without saying, sir, when bank gives you credit, bank is not creating money. A bank is not giving its own money to you as loans. What bank is doing is taking money from the public and giving that back to the public as a form of loans. So I accept money from the public in the form of deposits. I accept money from the public in the form of deposits and I give that money back to the public in the form of loans. And I give that money back to the public in the form of loans. That's what I do in credit. As a bank, when I'm managing credit, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm accepting money from the public and giving that money back to the public. That's what I do in credit. Are you getting this? So, in managing credit, I am ultimately taking money from the public and giving money to the public. Now, a bank acts as an intermediary between the provider of funds and the seeker of funds. Provider of funds are the people who are giving me money in terms of deposits, savings deposits, fixed deposits. Seeker of funds are the people who are taking loans from me. Okay. Bank accepts deposits from one group and provides funds to another group. Since bank grants credit, it accepts the risk on a regular basis. Hence, banks evaluate their experience and incorporate lessons from failure in a routine manner. Obviously, banks have credit risk on both sides, if you understand. Because credit risk is a two-party risk, two-way risk. Bank, when it accepts deposits, it has a credit risk. Bank, when they give credit in the form of loans, they have a credit risk. Because it's a two-way risk. So banks face credit risk in both the ways, when they collect money from the depositors and when they give the money to the suppliers. Okay. Now, how much credit risk are they willing to take? How much credit risk are they willing to take? This is going to depend upon obviously the experience of the banks. So it will ultimately depend upon the bank's experience, how much risk are they willing to accept. Okay. Banks cater to both segments, wholesale as well as retail segments. We have a lot of detailed discussions about this. Okay. We have a detailed discussions about wholesale segment and credit retail segment of the banks. What's the difference between a wholesale segment and a retail segment, sir? Basically, what's the main difference is that in a wholesale segment, the service that the banks is providing is to the business houses, to the large business corporates. Retail is to the individual clients, individual customers. So when I and you go for a loan, that is a retail banking. When large corporates they go for a loan, that's like wholesale banking. What's the main difference? The difference comes in the type of products and the type of size of services. So let's say retail segment, you will have large volume of customers, but the per customer transaction value will be lower. So when we go to the bank for a loan, we will take a housing loan, car loan. The loan amount would be 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 50 lakhs, 1 crore, 2 crore. When corporates go to the banks for loans, they take business loans, term loans. They will be adding a couple of zeros, 100 crores, 50 crores. There are defaults of thousands of crores. Okay. So obviously, the entire concept is different because they're two different markets altogether with different set of customers and with the different set of products altogether as well. Okay. The main distinction between these two segments is complexity of financial products involved. For example, in case of retail segment, the banking products may generally range from credit card to housing loans. In case of wholesale segment, there are n number of financial products. Main source of seekers of banks funds are corporates ranging from small to large organizations. Obviously, the retail segment is a very narrow segment because obviously all the retails together also they will not take that much amount of loan as the wholesale segment takes. So which is why wholesale segment gets more priority from the banks in terms of services as well, because they are the larger seeker of funds who generate the larger segment of banks revenues. Okay, but are we very clearly getting the concept that the banks serve to two different segments, the retail segment and the wholesale segment, that we will discuss at length later on as well. There is a risk and return trade-off in terms of credit risk, and we have to decide how much credit risk are we willing to accept. Credit risk is going to be a two-way risk and it's not a one-way risk. We will discuss that both sides of the transaction are facing a credit risk, and credit risk is also called a counterparty risk, or it's going to be called a default risk, which is about the chances of default of the other party. Okay, let's move ahead then. Components of credit risk. Components of credit risk. Broadly, credit risk can be divided into following components. Credit risk can be divided into following components. What are the components here? Default risk, exposure risk, recovery risk. Okay, now default risk is the amount that we will lose if the other party defaults. The risk of the other party missing a payment obligation, this is default risk. The other person may default, not pay the amount on time, that's the default risk. But if a default happens, what is the amount that I will lose? That will depend upon exposure risk. Default risk is the possibility or the probability that the other person may default. Is the possibility or the probability that the other person may default. That's default risk. But even if the other person defaults, how much amount will I lose? That is exposure risk. That is the amount of loss that I will face if the other person defaults. That's the amount at exposure that I may lose if the other person defaults. That's the exposure risk. That's the amount of exposure that I have. But out of the exposure, there may be some amount that I may be able to recover. There may be some amount that I may be able to recover because of third party guarantees, because of collaterals. I may be able to recover some amount. The amount that I may be able to recover may not be adequate and appropriate. That is a recovery risk. And when I combine the effect of all these three, then I get the total value of credit risk. Come to the next topic first, that will make this more easy. Measurement of credit risk. Measurement of credit risk. So when I measure credit risk, let's say credit risk I measure by C. So C is equal to D into A into 1 minus R. Now this D is your default risk. This A is your exposure risk, and this R captures your recovery risk. That is the reason I came to the formula first. D is the default risk, that is the chances of default of the other party. Exposure risk, that is the amount at exposure if the other person defaults. And the recovery risk is the amount that will be recovered. Recovery risk is the amount that will be recovered once the other person defaults. So if R is what we can recover, then 1 minus R is the amount that we will lose, because that's what we will not be able to recover. If I am able to recover 20%, then the amount that I am not able to recover is 80%. If I am able to recover 63%, then the amount that I am not able to recover is 37%. So R tells me how much we will be able to recover. 1 minus R tells me how much we will not be able to recover. But 1 minus R tells me how much percentage we will not be able to recover. The percentage of what? Percentage of exposure risk. The amount that is at exposure. The A amount. And the probability of that happening is D percentage. So let's say there is example, 10% chance of customer A defaulting. There is 10% chance of customer A defaulting. Amount due from him 30 crores. We expect to recover 60% of the total amount in case of default. Are you getting the example? Are you getting the example? There are 10% chances of the other person, of a customer A defaulting. The amount that he has borrowed from us is 30 crores, and we expect that 60% of the amount we will be able to recover. So what is the amount that we will not be able to recover? 40%. So the credit risk is 10% into 30 crores into 1 minus 60%. That is 10% into 30 into 40%. 1.2 crores. So the credit risk that I face is of 1.2 crores. That is the amount that I chance expected loss that we may face. Are you getting this? So this credit risk was dependent upon three things: default risk, chances of default; exposure risk, the amount at exposure; and recovery risk, how much we will be able to recover and how much we may not be able to recover. Are we getting this part? Measurement of credit risk: C is equal to D into A into 1 minus R. D is default percentage, A is the amount at exposure, R is the recovery rate. R is the recovery rate in percentage. This default percentage can also be computed through probability. This default percentage is computed through probability. So default percentage into the amount at exposure into 1 minus R percentage. Now this 1 minus R, now this same formula we will call it a little later in the next part of the chapter. We will call it probability of default, that is your D percentage. Exposure at default, that is A, into LGD, loss given default, that is 1 minus R. percentage. Are you getting this? So the second half of the chapter will discuss this formula at length. That is why I am just dropping the formula for you right now, but we are not going into detailed part of the formula right now, because this is there at length. We will discuss computation of each of the part. So the D percentage that we are saying, the chances of default, the probability of default is what we call it, probability of default, PD. We will learn how to calculate it. The A amount, that is the exposure, the amount at exposure, that is the exposure at default. We will learn how to compute it. The LGD, loss given default, the loss if default happens. The loss if default happens, that is 1 minus R. That is 1 minus recoveries. We will learn how to compute it. So we will learn how to compute each of the components of this formula. But for now, this is the first time that they drop the formula, so they're not giving the detailed formula, they give it in a simpler way, D into A into 1 minus R. But that's the same thing that we will discuss later as PD into EAD into LGD. Okay, so I want you to draw the parallel here itself. Okay, you can write this in the books itself. The same formula would be referred again later on as credit risk is equal to PD into EAD into LGD. As PD into EAD into LGD. If you want to write down the formula, PD is probability of default. PD is probability of default. EAD is exposure at default. Exposure at default. LGD is loss given default. LGD is loss given default. Okay, giving you a minute, just copy down the example as well. The solution 1.2 crores. Okay, done. Next, now if I come back to the previous page, the components of credit risk, we have three terms: default risk, exposure risk, and recovery risk. D, A, and R. Okay, one by one. Default risk, this risk means the missing of payment obligation. Default risk can be measured by probability of default. Are you getting this? PD is what it is measured through. So it is the chances of the default happening. It depends on credit worthiness of a borrower, which in turn depends upon various factors like management of the organization, size of the business, strength and reputation of promoters, etc., etc. So the chances of default will depend upon a lot of factors. How much is the collateral that he has given? What is the strength of the business, the balance sheet of the business, the income of the business, the product line of the business, the geographical dispersion of the business, various factors. We consider all that and then consider the PD. Pen drive? No. Probability of default. Exposure risk, this implies the uncertainty associated with future level or amount of risk. This risk is mainly associated with unexpected action of other party, prepayment of loan before due date, or request for refund of deposit before due date. Due to uncertainty, generally off balance sheet items create such risks. However, in such cases, the exposure is not associated with client's behavior, rather behavior of market which keeps on changing constantly. Okay. In case value of derivative position turns out to be positive, there is great risk as it will lose money if other party defaults. To overcome such risk, normally derivative instruments are used. What are we talking about here is, let's say you buy a call option. You buy a call option. Now, if you buy a call option and your payoff is zero, payoff, call option, your payoff can either be positive or zero. You are a buyer of a call option. So, if I buy a call option, my payoff will be zero or positive. Now, if the payoff is zero, it does not matter. But if the payoff is positive, I have a counterparty risk, credit risk. Why? Because the other party may or may not pay the amount due on maturity. So when the credit risk, we are saying in case of a derivative, it will become, the credit risk will come into the picture only when it is, payoff is there. When payoff is zero, then there will be no credit risk for me. So that's what it says. In such cases, the exposure is not associated with the client's behavior, rather it depends upon market. Now this, let's say if I have bought a call option, now this credit risk, whether it will be there or not, it will not depend on me, it will depend upon market. The amount of the exposure will not be in my hands, it's not fixed, it will keep on changing. That's what we are saying, that the exposure amount in some cases may not be known with certainty. Why? For example, a call option, I will not know with certainty exactly how much is the exposure amount. Why, sir? Because what will be the payoff on maturity, I don't know. If the call stock price rises drastically, I will keep on earning more profits on the call option. But how much will be the amount, I don't know. So that is why the exposure amount may not be known with certainty, is what we are trying to say here. Are you getting this part? No, there will be a contingency on the amount of the exposure as well. There will be a contingency about the amount of exposure as well. Recovery risk, this risk is related to recovering in the event of default, which in turn depends upon various factors such as the quality of guarantee provided by the borrower and other surrounding circumstances. Recovery risk is the amount that we will be able to recover in case of default, once the default has happened. Default risk is measuring the possibility of default. Default risk is measuring the possibility of default. Exposure risk is measuring the total amount that is there at the exposure. that the amount that we may lose, the total amount that is exposed that we may lose in case the default happens. And recovery risk is measuring the loss that we will face if the default happens, because recoveries may not be sufficient. So how much recovery we will be able to make and how much percentage we will not be able to recover, that is the recovery risk. Now this will depend upon the guarantees, the collaterals. This can be minimized by collateral and third party guarantees, but these two also have their risks. So when I take a collateral, there is a risk that the collateral value may decrease, I told you, or the collateral may not be liquidated easily when we need the money. Third party guarantee, the problem is that the guarantor may die or may lose its creditworthiness. So that if the guarantor's value goes down, eventually the guarantee is not sufficient. So Mr. A gives a guarantee to on behalf of Mr. B. Mr. B takes a loan. This is bank. Bank wants a guarantee, so Mr. A gives a guarantee. Are you with me? Now the problem is, if Mr. A's credit worthiness goes down, and if I am not sure whether Mr. A will be able to pay off in case of default of Mr. B, nothing has happened with Mr. B here, but the guarantor's credit worthiness may go down, and his ability to honor the guarantee, that can be a problem that we might face. Okay, want you to take a few minutes, just read the 2 points, collateral risk and third party risk. Giving you a couple of minutes, please. Simple topics we've discussed sufficient. Okay. Although collateral reduces the credit risk, but it happens only if the collateral can be sold at a significant value, only if we will be able to sell the collateral and recover the amount that we have to recover. The quickness in realization of collateral depends upon its nature and prevailing market conditions. So if I have given listed securities as collateral, sir, it will be very easy for me to sell them and get the money because it's easily tradable. But if I have given a property, immovable property as a collateral, it will be difficult to get a buyer and to be able to sell it off. That's not going to be very, very easy. In normal course, fixed asset collateral normally carries lower realizable value than cash collateral. Fixed assets will have lower realizable value than cash collateral. What is cash collateral? That's cash and cash equivalents, like marketable securities that can be readily converted into cash. Fixed asset collaterals will always have some kind of a loss that we will have to face when we try to liquidate them. However, if a buoyant market, say in case of a property, even a fixed asset in the form of a house property carries a higher value. Depends upon the market conditions. So if the markets are in a buoyant phase where the prices are constantly increasing, there's flush of liquidity coming into the markets. So then in that case, you might still be able to get a good value for fixed assets. Otherwise, valuations might be difficult. With the use of collateral, the credit risk becomes twofold. Uncertainty related to access and disposing incumbences, which may be legal in some cases. So there can be legal issues in selling of the assets. So now obviously in India, because of the IBC, it's becoming more easy to be able to recover your dues by selling the assets of the borrower. Otherwise, earlier what used to happen is businesses used to default and continue doing business for years and years without repaying the money. Why? Because they couldn't, the lenders couldn't do anything about it. Now they can get the assets liquidated and they could recover their amounts. That's what the IBC does for them. So which is why getting it sold, getting the assets sold and recovered will also be a legal process, because it's not that tomorrow I go give a notice and ask you to vacate the place and I will sell it off. Not that easy. There's a lot of process that goes on before this can be done. Will take a time, 6 months maybe. Uncertainty relating to the value realizable from the collateral, which may be subject to various factors. To some extent, the 2008 crisis was due to overvaluation of the collateral against which borrowers were granted hefty loan, and at the time of realization the collateral value was very less. That's exactly what I've been telling you since many classes. That's exactly what happened in the 2008 crisis, where initially they had given a loan much higher. They had given a loan much higher than the value of the property was, or justified was. So then, because it was in a buoyant market, but when the collaterals, the property value started decreasing, they couldn't recover that much amount. Why? Because there was huge amount of properties coming into the market for sale, and there were huge defaults happening. They couldn't pay off. The properties came into the market for sale, but there was no buyer. So property valuations further decreased, and that's how the property prices fell down. Okay. Third party guarantee. This collateral is a kind of a simple transfer of risk on guarantor, and in case a guarantor defaults, then risk comes back to the lender. So obviously the risk is of the borrower. If the borrower gets a third party guarantee, then the risk is transferred onto the guarantor, because if the borrower defaults, then the guarantor has to pay. But if they both default, ultimately the lender will suffer. That's the risk that still exists, that in case they both default, then we will still not be able to recover. That is why when you're taking a third party guarantee, the guarantor has to be a prominent person who has that much of a credit worthiness that we will give credit to Mr. B only on the basis of the guarantee of Mr. A. That much credit worthiness of Mr. A must exist. That's what we're trying to tell you here. Okay, that's what we have been discussing with you, credit risk. So we have discussed what is credit risk. It has to be a two-way thing. There's a risk return trade-off that we do. The components of credit risk, which is the default risk, PD, exposure at risk or the exposure risk, and the loss given default, that is dependent upon recovery risk. That's how much we will be able to recover if a default occurs. The recoveries can be better through two methods. Either we take a collateral or we can have third party guarantees. The formula we have discussed and understood clearly. Credit risk is D into A into 1 minus R. We move ahead. Basic kid stuff coming up. Factors affecting credit risk. Factors affecting credit risk. So there will be some internal factors that will affect credit risk, and there will be some external factors that will affect credit risk. So what kind of internal factors and external factors can affect credit risk? So internal factors will be factors within the business, within the banks. So if the bank is not able to recover properly, if the bank has given too high credit to a person who did not deserve that much, these are the factors on which credit risk. So they will set credit limits. We said if they did not set credit limits, or they set too higher credit limits, that's the risk that they have. These are internal factors that can create credit risk. then if they do not have a proper recovery mechanism, if they are not doing a proper monitoring of the borrower, so what happens is, I'll tell you, when banks give you a loan, especially in a long term loan, it's not that I give you a long term loan and I just sit back. I will keep monitoring your business as well, just to be sure that you're still capable of repaying that loan. So the minute I feel that your ability to pay that loan or repay that loan is doubtful, I'm going to immediately come and ask you for giving me some kind of a collateral or a guarantee or some kind of a recovery assurance. But if I'm not doing proper monitoring, eventually there will be high chances that I might not be able to recover the full amount from you. These are internal issues. Now the external issues could be, like we said, the security markets may crash, the interest rates may increase, leading to fall in the bond prices. So there can be adverse movements of interest rates, there can be adverse movements in the stock markets. Let's say, for example, if you've given a loan to a foreign customer, so you have given foreign loans, so in that case exchange rates may affect your businesses. So there can be various internal factors and external factors that can create credit risk for the business. The factors affecting credit risk: internal factors, these are internal to the bank. For example, concentration of credit in a particular geographical location or business segment. Did we not discuss this in the previous chapter itself? I think, if you remember, I said, this concentration enhances the risk for the bank. So that is why banks want to disperse, diversify. They will set limits in terms of how much they can give to a particular customer. Individual customer level limits will be there. Product wise, region wise limits will be there. Geographically limits will be there. There will be limits with respect to product wise, industry wise. So in a particular segment of the industry, how much loans will I give, so that I do not have over dependence on a particular industry. Are you getting all this? Same thing. So concentration risk, if the bank does not pay attention and they have over dependence on a particular customer or industry. So let's say if I have given, let's say if I have given 25% of my loans to Nirav Modi. Are you getting this now? That is what happens to something like a PNB. So for example, if I have given huge amount of loans to the real estate sector, and because of the COVID situations, the industry is suddenly in a liquidity crunch and there is a stagnation in the industry. The real estate people, they are not being able to complete the projects. There is defaults, there is delays. That can create a major issue for me. Let's say, for example, if I have given too much of a loan in a particular let's say to Japanese companies, and if there's an earthquake in Japan, you getting what I'm trying to say? There can be region wise concentration, there can be industry wise concentration, there can be individual client wise concentration. But in either of the cases, we have to ensure that there is not too much of a concentration that creates internal risk for the banks. Excessive lending to a particular industry, so it can be industry wise concentration, geographical concentration. Ignoring the purpose for which the loan was sought by the customer, if you're not paying attention to all this. Poor quality appraisal while granting the loan. Absence of efficient recovery mechanism. Okay, very relevant points. So while I was giving the loan, if I did not do a proper appraisal of the applicant, and in that case I ended up giving a loan much higher than what I should have given, or giving a loan to a person whom I should not have given the loan only at the first place. I may end up giving higher amount of loan than what I should have given, or I may end up giving a loan to a person whom I should not have given the loan at all at the first place. These are the risks that I would be exposed to in case I am not following a proper appraisal of the applications. These are the internal risk factors that can create credit risk for the banks. If I have heavy concentration in terms of geographically, in terms of industry wise, if I have let's say too heavy concentration individual client wise, if I have too heavy a if I have poor recovery mechanisms, these can create credit risk for me. If I am doing poor appraisal of applications from the client, from the customers, okay, if I'm not doing proper monitoring, if I'm not seeing whether the purpose for which the loan was applied and whether that funds are actually being used for that purpose or not, these can be factors that can create credit risk. Similarly, external factors, these are factors external to the bank and beyond its controls. These not only impact the profitability of the borrower but also affect the repayment capability. They affect the repayment capability of the borrowers. For example, fluctuation in interest rates, change in government policies, fluctuation in interest rates, change in political environment, change in the foreign project. In case of foreign project, change in country risk profile. So if you have, again, points that we were discussing, so if these are factors that are external to the bank and these create a risk for the bank, these are factors external to the bank and they create a risk for the bank. Okay, these are going to create credit risk for the banks. How do they create credit risk for the banks? Because fluctuation in exchange rates, in case you have given a foreign loan, creates fluctuations in terms of the amount recoverable. Change in government policy, so the repatriation of funds, transfer of funds could become a problem. Government policies may block or may mandate certain things to be done or block certain things from being done, could be an issue for me. Interest rate fluctuations can lead to obviously recovering in terms of the loans that you've given on floating rates, or let's say for example bond prices, they can both get influenced by this. Political environment of our own country may change, and that can be a major thing, especially in a turmoil. We discussed in country risk. If the country risk profile changes and the country risk of that country increases because of something like a Myanmar incident. Okay, so these are factors that can create credit risk. These were external factors. We have discussed a lot of things about credit risk. What is credit risk? We have discussed components right from PD, EAD, LGD, basic concepts we have introduced onto you. So default risk, exposure risk and recovery risk with respect to third party guarantees and collaterals. We discussed the formulas. We've discussed internal risks and external risks. Clear till here now, everyone? Yes.